We begin with the cost of President Trump's vanity projects reaching new heights, with reporting that his administration is estimated to spend at least $900 million on remodeling the White House. The cost would be covered primarily by taxpayers, according to the Washington Post. That is, if the courts allow him to move forward on construction. Yesterday, his administration asked the Supreme Court to let his ballroom construction continue after a nonprofit organization, the National Trust for Historic Preservation, sued to stop it. And late last night, the president fired off on that organization, referring to the group as, quote, treasonous, and reiterated his claim that the ballroom is, quote, vital to our national security. These plans for his billion-dollar dream home come as the U.S. economy is getting worse for Americans. The Bureau of Labor Statistics found this week that costs remain elevated for consumers amid stubborn inflation in July, and as average hourly pay slowed down for workers. But Trump remains laser-focused on his vanity projects. A new report from PolitiFact at Poynter Institute found that he even devoted 45,000 words to his construction projects since January, second only to the Iran war. And when it comes to that war, Trump insisted yesterday that he wouldn't apologize for its cost on Americans.
So I just say this. So for you to pay a tiny little bit more for your gasoline, just remember you're doing it so that a very evil country cannot have a country. Really, it's the number one state sponsor of terror in the world. We don't want to have them have a nuclear weapon. So remember that when you have to pay a little bit more, you're at $4. It's okay. I mean, it's I'll never apologize. I did the right thing.
Joining us now is Vanity Fair Washington correspondent Aidan McLaughlin and Axios senior economics reporter Courtney Brown. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and kicking off this Saturday morning. Aidan, I want to ask you about this disconnect that we're seeing between the White House and the rest of the country. We are running out of time here until the November elections. We're 2 weeks away from Labor Day weekend, when voters are going to most likely finally start really tuning into their electoral choices in November. What's going on at the White House? Why is the president so distracted, so off message? And is there any plan for recourse here?
There's certainly not a plan for recourse. And the reason we know that is that late last year, John McLaughlin, one of Donald Trump's pollsters, went to the White House.
Not related to you.
A relation. I've tried to use that as the course of my reporting. It has not worked. But he went to the White House. He met with the president and top officials and explained to them, this was in December of last year, explained to them that if the president could not stay focused on a message about the economy, about economic anxieties of Americans, and if he didn't do it soon, that Republicans would face a bloodbath in the midterms. What we saw over the next 6 months was Trump fixated on domestically on massively expensive renovation projects and launching wars around the world. There was the Venezuela operation, came a couple of weeks later, followed that by the war in Iran. And so the White House is known, and the president is known for a very long time, that this is not what the American people care about and what they want to be talking about going into the midterms. And yet the strategy has not changed. So expecting it to change now, I think, is wishful thinking, although I'm sure his aides would love for him to start talking about it at rallies.
Yeah, reportedly the chief of staff is telling everyone else to operate on message about how all the Republicans should be talking about things, but let the president be the president, which makes it difficult when he has the biggest megaphone. Courtney, what we heard from President Trump there in Garden City in New York, talking about I guess it's his version of John F. Kennedy's, ask not what your country can do for you. It's like, pay more at the gas pump. It's a little bit of a sacrifice. Your tomatoes are too high. It's a little bit of a sacrifice. Oh, no, not the lettuce. It's a little too high. That's the sacrifice. When you talk to folks because you talk to the Wall Street folks, you talk to the Main Street folks, there always is a disconnect. Does that disconnect feel like it's getting wider and wider?
It does, especially over the last 2 weeks. It's kind of been a whirlwind few weeks for the economy. If you're really into the data, the way that people, nerdy people like me. Can we just talk about what's happened? It's become very clear that it's not just inflation that is the problem with the economy anymore. I think in recent months, maybe the president could feel a little good that the labor market was okay, but we got data last week that showed that the labor market actually might not be okay. We shed 23,000 jobs in July, and that's really worrying. We got data yesterday that showed that consumers pulled back on retail shopping in a significant way, biggest decline we've seen in over a year. So now folks I talk to on Wall Street are a little bit more concerned about the growth of the economy that had looked okay. And they are concerned about inflation that kind of matches what I'm hearing on Main Street. They've always been upset about the state of the labor market. They've always been upset about high prices. So maybe there's a little bit of a meeting ground between the Wall Street economists and everyday Americans who are worried about the state of the economy. Nothing to like freak out about, but definitely a warning sign in recent weeks.
I want to read a quote from a story in the Journal that I thought was pretty incredible from a Republican pollster who runs focus groups with voters in battleground states. And he said, quote, they know exactly to the dollar the amount of their power bill. And then let's contrast that with Trump. And here is how Trump has consistently been talking about this economy.
Gas prices soaring to more than $4.50 a gallon on average.
This is peanuts, and I appreciate everybody putting up with it for a little while. It won't be much longer.
Consumer inflation has moved to the highest level, up to the highest level since April of 2023.
The numbers look great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation. When the war's over,
yes,
it's coming down.
I know you can't.
It's going to come down like a rock.
New polling shows 2/3 of Americans say they find groceries unaffordable.
They'd send you prices soaring and inflation skyrocketing, which is exactly what would happen if you had somebody else sitting in the position that I am right now.
GDP in the second quarter was just 1.5%.
I saw polls today on television that say Donald Trump polls on the economy aren't good. The economy is the greatest economy we've ever had by far.
Aiden, you would think that this would have White House political advisors panicking for what's going to happen in all of those battleground states because there is such a disconnect from what Trump is saying about the economy and the ground reality. You know, he's falling into the problem of Bidenomics and trying to tell people their experienced reality isn't what it is. How are they planning to overcome that?
Right. And I think this is the evergreen problem with Donald Trump's political project is that when he's campaigning, he's very good at casting the economy as being a disaster. When he gets in office, it only takes a couple of weeks for him to turn around and say it's the best economy we've ever had. And when the economy is struggling under the weight of a war and climbing inflation, climbing grocery prices, climbing gas prices, I just don't think that works in terms of, selling it to the American people. When we're looking at the midterms, one thing that I think the Democrats who have been successful in these primaries so far have done a good job of is tying all of this kind of lavish profligate spending, whether it's on a war in Iran that the president has not really explained to the American people or an enormously expensive ballroom at home. They've been able to tie that spending to economic anxieties that Americans have here. And those are the candidates that have really had success. As far as White House advisors trying to convince Trump to stay on message, I think they gave that up a long time ago. I think they can present him with information about what voters want to hear. Whether he's going to listen on the campaign stump is entirely another question.
I think Donald Trump is on message for himself. I think this is, I'm sorry, Jack, because Jack got a question for Courtney. But I think the thing that is so interesting about this moment when we're talking about whether or not Donald Trump is on message, Donald Trump is talking about the Save America Act. Donald Trump is lying about the war in Iran. Donald Trump is lying about gas prices and the economy. He is on message for himself. The problem is, Jack, that he is not paying attention to how all the other Republicans and what their message, they feel like it would actually resonate with people in November.
Well, and he's also, we've talked about this before, sticking with some of the policies that are exacerbating these affordability crisis concerns and increasing consumer costs, for everything from food inflation related to food to consumer goods. That tariff regime that is contributing to that the president is so stuck on, Courtney, is still in place. The average statutory tariff rate now stands at 11%. This is according to the Budget Lab at Yale, which has a tariff tracker, and the state of U.S. tariffs all over the world right now. Estimated household costs due to tariffs are totaling about $1,100 annually under current law. And over the next 10 years, current law tariffs estimated to raise about $1.9 trillion. And meanwhile, at the same time, there are refunds that are going back to these companies from, I believe was the first regime of tariffs that this administration tried and then had to undo due to the Supreme Court ruling. But what do these refunds mean for consumers, Courtney? Obviously, they're going back to these businesses. There are over 40 S&P 500 companies that have reported now $2.1 billion in cash already received, with a $9.6 billion in total expected to be doled out by the administration. But is that trickling down to consumers in any way?
Not that we've found so far. We did a bit of reporting a few weeks ago looking at this very question. What are companies saying about this unexpected cushion of money that they are receiving? A lot of them, and we're talking big companies like Nike, a lot of them are saying, hey, we're also facing rising costs related to the war, and we're going to take this money and we are going to reinvest it in our business in the hope of offsetting what might be future price increases for consumers. That is the way they're thinking about this money. It's not being passed along to consumers in the traditional sense that you walk into a store one day and everything's, 25% off because companies got this money back. That's not what's happening. But they are looking at this money as a little bit of their own cushion to save on their own higher costs that they're facing. I have to say, I hope the folks at Yale Budget Lab, and I know they are, writing these estimates in pencil, because the tariff regime is continuing to shift it quietly, though, much more quietly than had been the case, last year and earlier this year. Remember, next week, we're meant to impose 50% tariffs on Canada. I don't know if that will happen. I'm going to spend my weekend trying to report that out. But it looks to be the case that we're going to hike tariffs on Canada, an ally. And I think President Trump is committed to using tariffs as a tool. So I think we might see tariff pressures continue in the months ahead.
I was on UPS the other day looking for a package, and it asked me if I had a refund that I needed. If so, you can go to a website. So I'm starting to see these pop up, guys, at other organizations and companies. Will you actually get in? How much money you will get back as a normal person as opposed to the companies? To be seen.